For 7 long years, Robert lived with a broken heart. His beloved tabby cat, Chebon, had gone missing without a trace, and each year his hopes of finding him faded. Robert did everything he could to bring his cat back, but it seemed like Chebon was gone for good. He had no idea that one phone call was about to change everything. It all started 7 years ago. Robert was getting ready to leave California and move to Ohio, a big change that came with its own challenges. But just before the move, his worst fear happened. Chebon went missing. The day Chebon disappeared, Robert's heart dropped. How could he leave without his companion? He quickly put his plans to move on hold and decided to stay in California to search for Chebon. For a whole year, Robert searched everywhere. He put up flyers, visited shelters, and walked around calling Chebon's name. And every time he heard a cat's meow, he hoped it was his. But after months of looking, Chebon was still missing. Robert's prayers seemed to go unanswered, and he realized he couldn't pause his life forever. "I remember praying and saying, 'God, I will do anything, just bring my Chebon back,'" Robert shared in a video by Ventura County Animal Services. But after a year with no sign of Chebon, Robert had to move on. He packed up and left California, carrying the pain of losing his cat, and it felt like the chapter with Chebon was over. Years went by, and while the pain lessened, the sadness of not knowing what happened to Chebon never fully went away. Robert had convinced himself that Chebon was gone for good. But one day, 7 years after Chebon disappeared, a stranger found a sick-looking cat in need of help. The kind woman noticed the cat's poor condition and took it to a vet. The vet examined the cat and found a microchip under its skin. Soon, the name of the cat's owner appeared on the vet's computer: Robert. The tabby, now 19 years old, has survived years on the streets. When Robert's phone rang, he wasn't expecting any surprises. But when the stranger told him the news, he could hardly believe it. "I was afraid it was some kind of mistake," he said. "How could it be possible?" After all these years, his beloved Chebon was still alive. With a mix of disbelief and happiness, Robert booked the earliest flight to California. Eager to reunite with the cat he thought he had lost forever. The reunion was unforgettable. Robert got off the plane, his heart racing with excitement. And when he arrived at the animal shelter, his hands shook as he prepared to see Chebon. Could it really be him? When the door opened and Chebon came out, his once bright orange fur had faded, and his body showed signs of the tough years he had lived through. But those eyes, the same ones Robert had known since Chebon was a kitten, were unmistakable. The moment they looked at each other, Robert knew it was his old friend. The story of Robert and Chebon's reunion spread quickly, touching everyone who heard it. It became a story of hope, persistence, and the strong bond between a man and his cat. After years of heartache, Robert felt like he had experienced a miracle. As they left the shelter, Robert made a promise to Chebon. "You're never leaving my side again," he said gently. Chebon, now safe in Robert's arms, purred in agreement. And after everything they had been through, they were finally where they belonged, together. Back at home, Robert made sure Chebon was comfortable. He set up a soft bed with warm blankets for his old friend. They spent hours sitting together, making up for lost time. And even after all those years, Chebon relaxed in Robert's presence. Every meow, nudge, and slow blink reminded Robert of the deep love they had always shared. For many, Chebon's story is proof that love has no limits or time. Even when everything seemed lost, the bond between Robert and his cat remained strong. The microchip, the kind stranger, and the caring vet all played a role in bringing them back together. But it was their love that made the reunion possible. As Robert looked at Chebon, curled up on his lap, he smiled. "I guess miracles really do happen," he said softly, thankful for the second chance with his furry friend. The video of Robert and Chebon's emotional reunion spread quickly across social media. Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times, reaching people around the world. Strangers who had never met Robert or Chebon were moved by their story, many commenting on how it restored their faith in hope and perseverance. Some shared their own stories of lost pets who never returned, while others spoke of miraculous reunions like Robert's. For Robert, it was overwhelming, but in a good way. He had spent years grieving in silence for his lost companion, and now it felt like the whole world was celebrating with him. But despite all the attention, Robert stayed focused on Chebon. The 19-year-old cat, though a bit worn down, seemed to recognize Robert immediately. Chebon had aged, his fur was thinner, and his steps were slower, but his spirit remained the same. Robert noticed that even after living on the streets for years, Chebon hadn't lost his curiosity. His eyes still followed Robert's every move, and after all that time apart, Chebon still greeted him with a familiar headbutt, a sign of trust and affection. Robert often thought about the journey they had both been through. The video had shown the tearful reunion, but the real story, he realized, was in the moments that followed, the small victories of reconnecting, rebuilding trust, and relearning each other's ways. There were tough times too. Chebon's health had been affected by his years on the streets. Robert quickly noticed that his once active cat now struggled with things that used to be easy. Chebon's legs were weaker, and sometimes he had trouble jumping onto the couch or finding his food. Robert made sure their home was comfortable for him, with soft places to rest and food within easy reach. They had regular vet visits to check on Chebon's health. The vet told Robert that Chebon was doing well for his age, but he did have signs of malnutrition, mild arthritis, and old injuries. Still, despite these challenges, Chebon seemed happy. He now lived in comfort and love, far from the dangers of the streets. Every evening, Robert and Chebon would sit by the window and watch the sunset, a peaceful routine that reminded Robert of how far they had come. As time passed, Robert received letters and emails from people who had seen the video of his reunion with Chebon. Many were pet owners who had lost their animals, while others were simply touched by their story. One letter stood out to them. It was from a woman who had lost her dog and had given up hope, but after watching Robert's story, she felt inspired to keep searching. Robert didn't see himself as a hero, but the messages made him realize how powerful love and hope could be. He responded to as many letters as he could, thanking people for their kind words and encouraging them to never give up on their loved ones, no matter how long it had been. The days turned into months, and Robert and Chebon found a new rhythm, their bond stronger than ever. Chebon, though older, seemed to regain some of his old energy. He spent his days lounging in the sunshine and playing with the toys Robert gave him. Robert knew their time together wouldn't last forever. Chebon was 19, and he'd already survived so much. But instead of worrying about the future, Robert chose to enjoy each day. Every morning he woke up to Chebon's soft purring, feeling grateful for their time together. Their journey had been long, but they were together again, and that was all that mattered. What a heartwarming story. And it's over to you now. What's your thoughts on this amazing story? Have you ever had a missing pet before? Please let us know in the comments down below, and have a great day.